Right, I'm going to be covering UV maps and the basics of texturing. This is just a little model I put together, and it's showing diffuse maps, which are doing the colour on this build, normal maps, which are making the surface appear kind of rough and textured, and specular maps, which are making the surface seem shiny, maybe even a little bit too shiny in this case, but that's a different problem which we're going to deal with later. Right, to understand where to get started, we've been focusing mostly on modelling. Now, to get texture and some colour in a good simple way. So here's the model just in Blender renderer. Let's put it in textured mode. Now this model has got a UV map, and if I just put this into edit mode and select it all, you can see all these scary looking pieces which represent each little part of the model. If I select different faces on my model, you'll see them appear alongside in the UV map. If you select everything, you can see it all spread about. But rather than terrifying you with how complicated it can end up, we shall open up a new instance of Blender, and we're on with 273 at the moment. It's a 273B, but we're just starting with the default cube. So I'm going to tab into edit mode. A UV map, let me just log out of that. By default, any mesh model, while it looks like it's got a surface, it really hasn't got one. It's better illustrated by going into wireframe mode. And all we've really got is a series of edges, faces, and vertices, which are all described in the 3D space, which we know is X, Y, and Z coordinates. Right, to unwrap this in the simplest manner, we change default view up here to UV editing mode, and you see the screen gets split into two halves. Then we would go to mesh, UV unwrap, and then smart UV project. Smart UV project is a kind of an automated method of doing a simple unwrap, which saves you having to worry about the subtler elements of it. So we click Smart UV Project and then just OK it. You will see it's unwrapped the model and it's flattened it out. A little bit like if you unwrap a cardboard box, which is, they describe it as being a net, and you can fold out the cardboard box flat. And this is kind of basically what we've done here. If we're to click New, we can make a texture. If we just go with the default sizes, certainly in the game industry, people use square textures to the power of 2, which is 1024, 1024, 2048 by 2048, etc. Normally we'd start with making a blank texture, but I'm going to use let's use a colour grid just to put some colour onto our texture. You see we've created a texture behind the UV map. Now you can't see it by default because we just set to just shaded mode. So let's go back into default view, up at the top, default view. Now we need to change our display mode to see the texture we've just kind of loaded behind this. So to do that, we change it to textures in the viewport shading, and now you can see the texture on the model. Now what you notice is this side's not textured and this side's not textured, neither is this one and neither is this. Now why is that? And the reason is because we've only got one light in the scene. This here is a light, and if we grab it, G to grab, move it around, you can see the sides which are in the dark come into the light and vice versa, which is really nice and really powerful. I've got a whole range of different lights. When you've got the light selected, click on the light. We're just using a point light at the moment. If we were to change this to a sun light, it throws a lot more light around. But if you change it to a hemi, it gives you quite even lighting, which it hasn't. Let me just check my other settings. I've just pressed N to open up the transform panel, and then I want to select shading and move on GLSL. That's good, isn't it? Can't see the texture at all now. Right, which brings us on to how to go about adding a texture to a model. Right, so you remember in the past we've added materials. So let's create a new material and call it our texture. Just tab into edit mode, select it all, and assign that. Now we did this before on the models, and now you can change the colour of this thing. But our next stage is we can add a texture to this. Now to do this, let's just drag this window across to make it a bit easier to see. Next to the material editor, we've got one called a texture editor. Now if we click this, we get a window we haven't seen before. If we hit new, it puts in just a black texture, which is not what we want as a starting point. I'm going to open an image. So if we go to open, I'm going to use ones from this folder my friend Chris has supplied. Click this icon, and we get a whole load of different looking textures. There's three basic textures most people kind of work with for games design, certainly. We use these bricks. The coloured looking image of a brick is referred to as a diffuse map. The kind of purpley blue weird looking thing is called a normal map, and that's used to add kind of texture, fine texture to a surface. And the third one is a specular map, which is an image which describes which bits are shiny and which bits aren't. But we'll start off by putting the texture map on. So I'm going to select that and open. And you see right away we've got bricks on here. And it looks alright. It looks alright. It's a bit shiny. So what we've been doing previously to adjust the shine is go into our specular settings, and you can turn up whether it's very, very shiny or not very shiny to adjust it. Right. Now, what I'm thinking at the moment is there are not very many bricks on a brick block. How do we get more of those on? Now, to resize the texture, we need to resize the UV. So if we go to UV editing, put this one into textured mode so we can see our texture. If we tab into edit mode, select all our faces. We select all our faces in the UV window, which we changed to up here, and press S to scale. You can see we can start increasing the size of the UV, increases the number of repeated images we're getting on our cube. And now I'm looking at it thinking, wouldn't it be nice, just turn limit selection off, wouldn't it be nice if the bricks ran all the way around the outside edge? Because this looks like a wall, but this bit's wrong. So if I'm going to select just that face, see it's selected just this face over here. Now with that one selected. If I do rotate X 90, can you see we just flip that around? So I want to do the same to that one as well. Rotate X 90. Probably that one as well. Rotate X 90. You see we spun those around. Now, what makes this kind of bewildering and confusing at first? Well, the power of this way of doing things lies in the fact that now I've got this section selected. If I do scale, see I can change the scale of this independently of the rest of it, which gives me an awful lot of power and an awful lot of control. Now if I try and get it to about the same size as the other bricks, which I'm going to guess as being about like that. Now can you see my brick courses don't line up? This is getting into the building course really. Now let's say with this face selected I use G to grab, then I can shuffle these things up and down and get my brick courses lining up, so it starts looking more like a real wall. It's not perfect, but it's close. If I messed around with the scale, we could do a really good job at that. But we're still not looking very realistic. Real walls have some texture to them. So how do we do that? Let's go back to my default view. And to do this, we need to add a normal map. A normal map is something you can create from an image or a model in Blender. But as a starting point, we're going to use some ready-made ones to save ourselves getting bogged down with technicalities. So to load a normal map, we've got to click on our texture window. Then we click the next texture slot here under the brick one. Then we hit New. And then we go to Open, go back to Chris's Materials, and we're looking for the normal map there, which is the purple one. You see it's brick normal. You're going to open that, and you think, let's turn my entire cube purple. And how do we change it so it's reading correctly? We're scrolling down the texture window, you get to the influence thing. And at the moment it's set so it's influencing the colour. So we've got a fader here. If we turn it up and down, you can see all the normal map, turn it down to nothing, then we just got the brick map. But we don't want that for this one. We want to turn this off, and we want to go over to geometry and select normal. You see right away we've started getting some surface displacement, and if we mess with our settings we can make it so the bricks stick out and the mortar seams go in, and if we go the other direction the mortar seams poke out and the other one sticks in. So I think something about there is probably right. It's still very shiny. Very shiny. Let's turn our specularity down to nothing, so we're not looking at all this shine being randomly applied. Okay, our third step. Let's bring in the correct specular shiny map. So we're going to click our third texture slot, hit New, go to Open, to Chris's Materials, and it's this one, Storm GS Brick Wall 1.3 Specular. I'm going to open that, and again now we're just looking at our specular map. So we scroll down our texture window, switch off colour, and we'll turn on specular intensity. And hopefully we should be seeing that influence, which we're not. We're not seeing any specular on that. Is our light bright enough? Let's just turn our light up. That's our light. Now we can adjust the brightness of the light by turning this up and down. That helps. I suppose the thing is with bricks is they're not terribly shiny by default. Let's turn that off. So it looks like in rendered mode. Yeah, you can that's better. It shows up in render. Rendering does a more accurate job than just the default GLSL mode. So I'm just dragging down my specular intensity. We can go to something like 0.175. Still quite shiny for a brick, isn't it? Let it render in a bit. Probably a little bit less. We'll go with that. Anyway, that's a brief overview. So we've covered unwrapping a model using Smart UV Project, and we've applied a material to it, and then we've applied 3 different textures: a diffuse, a normal map, and a specular map, which is the gist of it. We're going to look more into UV mapping, because as your model gets more and more complicated, there are more practical ways of unwrapping things automatically to get a neater, more suitable job. But we'll leave it at that as a starting point.